The wedding rehearsal was supposed to be perfect. Everyone was seated in the little chapel where I'd dreamed of getting married since I was 12 years old. My fiancé John was standing at the altar looking handsome in his navy suit, and I was about to practice the walk I'd been imagining my entire life. But there was one problem: Dad wasn't there. I kept checking my phone, thinking maybe he was just running late from work, but 20 minutes had passed and still no sign of him. Then I heard the chapel door creak open, and there he was, looking flustered and slightly out of breath. But instead of taking his place beside me, he walked straight over and grabbed my arm. "We need to talk," he said quietly, pulling me toward the back of the chapel. My heart started racing because something about his tone scared me. "What's wrong, Dad?" I asked, but he was already walking me outside where we couldn't be overheard. Once we were alone in the parking lot, he turned to face me with an expression I'd never seen before. "If she's not invited to the wedding tomorrow, then neither am I," he said firmly. I stared at him in confusion. "She?" I asked, though I already knew who he meant. "Your stepmother, Caroline. If you don't invite her, I won't walk you down the aisle." The words hit me like a physical blow. I had spent months planning this wedding, and walking down the aisle with my dad was the one thing I had been looking forward to most. "Dad, please," I started, but he shook his head. "That's my final answer, Bernadette. Caroline is my wife and she deserves to be here." When I refused to change my mind, he turned around and walked away, leaving me standing alone in the parking lot in my wedding dress. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the times Dad and I had talked about my future wedding when I was little. I must have been 7 or 8 when I first asked him, "Daddy, will you walk me down the aisle when I get married?" He had scooped me up and spun me around, saying, "Of course, princess. That's what daddies are for." We used to practice in our living room, with me holding onto his arm while Mom played wedding music on her old piano. Dad would tell me I was the most beautiful bride he'd ever seen, even though I was wearing one of Mom's old nightgowns as a pretend wedding dress. Those memories felt like they belonged to someone else's life now. The dad who had promised to walk me down the aisle was the same man who had been my hero for the first 15 years of my life. He taught me to ride a bike, helped me with my math homework, and never missed a single school play or soccer game. But that version of my dad disappeared the day he told Mom he wanted a divorce. I was 15 when he sat us down in the living room and explained that he had fallen in love with someone else. "Her name is Caroline," he said, like that would make it hurt less. I didn't plan for this to happen, but sometimes life takes unexpected turns. Mom cried for weeks after he moved out, and I spent most of my junior year of high school angry at him for destroying our family. The man who had promised to always be there for me had chosen another woman over his own wife and daughter. The morning after the rehearsal disaster, I woke up to a long text message from Dad that made my stomach turn. "Bernadette, I've been thinking about our conversation last night, and I'm disappointed in how selfish you're being. Caroline has been part of this family for 8 years now. She's my wife, and excluding her from your wedding is childish and petty. You're punishing me for moving on with my life after your mother and I divorced, but that's not fair. Caroline loves you and has tried so hard to build a relationship with you over the years. The least you can do is show her some respect on what should be a happy day for our whole family. I hope you'll reconsider because I really want to walk you down the aisle tomorrow. But if you're going to continue being stubborn about this, then I guess I can't be there. The choice is yours." Before I could even respond to Dad's message, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. When I opened it, I realized it was from Caroline herself. "Hi Bernadette. I know you don't want me at your wedding, and I understand that this is difficult for you. But I think you're being incredibly spoiled and selfish. Your father has done everything for you over the years, and this is how you repay him? By making him choose between his wife and his daughter? I hope you grow up someday and realize how much you've hurt the man who loves you most." I stared at both messages, feeling sick to my stomach. They were trying to make me the villain in this situation, like I was the one being unreasonable. The truth was, I had very good reasons for not wanting Caroline at my wedding. It wasn't just about her being the woman Dad left Mom for, though that was certainly part of it. Over the past 8 years, Caroline had made it clear that she saw me as competition for Dad's attention and affection. She was never openly cruel or hostile, but she had a way of making little comments that cut deep while maintaining a sweet, innocent smile. At family gatherings, she would make jokes about how dramatic I was or how I still acted like Daddy's little girl even though I was an adult. When I graduated from college, Caroline actually told the guests at my graduation party that I was lucky to have a real mother figure now, because Mom had apparently done such a poor job raising me. That comment had cut so deep that I left my own graduation celebration early and cried in my car for an hour. Caroline also had a talent for inserting herself into every memory and milestone that should have been about me and Dad. When I got engaged, Dad wanted to take me to dinner to celebrate, but Caroline insisted on coming along and spent the entire evening talking about her own wedding planning experience. When I was looking for a wedding dress, Dad offered to come shopping with me, but Caroline showed up too and kept suggesting dresses that looked exactly like the one she had worn when she married my father. Every time I tried to have a private moment or conversation with Dad, Caroline would find a way to interrupt or redirect his attention to herself. She had slowly but systematically replaced my mom in every aspect of Dad's life, and now she wanted to replace her at my wedding too. When Mom read the text messages Dad and Caroline had sent me, she completely broke down. I found her sitting at the kitchen table with tears streaming down her face, staring at my phone screen. "Maybe I shouldn't even come to the wedding," she said quietly. "If my being there is going to cause problems between you and your father, maybe it would be better if I just stayed home." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Mom, no. You're my mother. Of course you're coming to my wedding." But she shook her head sadly. "Bernadette, I don't want to be the reason you don't have your father there on the most important day of your life. He should walk you down the aisle, even if that means I have to make myself scarce." The fact that Mom was willing to sacrifice her own place at my wedding just to avoid conflict made me even angrier at Dad and Caroline. They had manipulated the situation so well that my own mother felt guilty for existing. Later that afternoon, I found out something that made everything even worse. My cousin Bethany called to tell me she had heard through the family grapevine that Dad had secretly invited Caroline to the wedding anyway. "He called my mom and asked if she thought Caroline should come," Bethany explained. "He said he was hoping you would change your mind at the last minute, so he wanted Caroline to be prepared to attend." The audacity was breathtaking. Not only was Dad trying to pressure me into inviting the woman who had destroyed my parents' marriage, but he was also making backup plans to bring her regardless of my wishes. I drove to Dad's house that evening, determined to have one final conversation before the wedding. When Caroline answered the door, she gave me a fake smile and called out, "Honey, Bernadette's here." Dad appeared in the hallway looking uncomfortable, like he knew exactly why I had come. "Can we talk privately?" I asked, but Caroline immediately piped up with, "Oh, there's no need for secrets. We're all family here." I looked directly at Dad. "Please. Just 5 minutes alone." He reluctantly followed me out to the front porch, and I could see Caroline watching us through the window. "Dad, I'm asking you one more time to reconsider. Please don't make me choose between having you at my wedding and standing up for what I believe is right." His expression didn't soften at all. "Bernadette, you're being dramatic about this whole situation. Caroline is my wife, and if you can't accept that after all these years, then maybe you're not as mature as I thought you were." I felt tears starting to form in my eyes. "This isn't about maturity, Dad. This is about respect. You left Mom for this woman, and now you want me to pretend that's okay by welcoming her to my wedding with open arms." Dad crossed his arms defensively. "Your mother and I had problems long before Caroline came into the picture. I'm not going to apologize for finding happiness again." I stared at him, this man who used to be my hero, and realized he was never going to understand my point of view. "Fine," I said quietly. "If that's how you feel, then I guess you won't be walking me down the aisle tomorrow." I turned and walked back to my car, and Dad didn't try to stop me. Later that night, around 10 o'clock, there was a knock at my apartment door. When I opened it, I was surprised to see Alex, Caroline's son from her first marriage. We had never been particularly close, partly because he was 3 years younger than me and partly because I had always seen him as part of the package deal that came with Caroline. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. "I heard everything that happened tonight." I hesitated for a moment, expecting him to defend his mother or try to convince me to change my mind about the wedding invitation. But when I saw the expression on his face, I realized he wasn't there to take sides. I let him in and we sat down on my couch. "I know what you're probably thinking," he said. "That I'm here to stick up for my mom and tell you that you're wrong." I nodded, because that was exactly what I had been thinking. Alex ran his hands through his hair and sighed. "The thing is, Bernadette, I think you're right. I've watched my mom insert herself into your relationship with your dad for years, and it's not fair. She's jealous of the bond you two used to have, and she's been working to destroy it bit by bit." I stared at him in shock. This was the last thing I had expected to hear. "I've wanted to say something for a long time, but I never knew how," Alex continued. "I love my mom, but I can see how she treats you and your mother. It's not okay." Then he said something that completely changed everything. "If you'll let me, I'd like to walk you down the aisle tomorrow." I had always assumed Alex didn't like me very much. Whenever we were at family gatherings, he was quiet and kept to himself, usually sitting in a corner with his phone or finding excuses to leave early. I thought he was just shy or maybe resentful about having to spend time with Dad's side of the family. But as we talked that night, I realized I had completely misunderstood him. "I wasn't ignoring you all these years," he explained. "I was just stuck in an impossible situation. I could see what my mom was doing to your relationship with your dad, but she's still my mother. I didn't know how to call her out without causing even more family drama." When he offered to walk me down the aisle, I started crying. Not because I was sad, but because for the first time in weeks, someone was offering to support me without expecting anything in return. "Are you sure?" I asked. "Your mom is going to be furious if she finds out." Alex smiled for the first time since he'd arrived. "Let her be furious. I'm tired of watching her hurt people I care about." I realized then that Alex and I could have been friends all these years if not for Caroline's toxic behavior. When I told Alex yes, that I would be honored to have him walk me down the aisle, I started crying again. But these were different tears, not tears of sadness or frustration, but tears of gratitude and relief. It wasn't the same as having my father there, but it was something real and meaningful. Alex stayed for another hour, and we talked more openly than we ever had before. He told me about his own complicated relationship with his mom, how she had always been possessive and controlling, even when he was a child. "She doesn't like sharing the people she considers hers," he explained. "She did the same thing to my dad's family when they got married the first time. She gradually cut him off from his parents and siblings until it was just the three of us." The next morning, Dad called me bright and early. I could tell from his tone that he had found out about Alex's plan to walk me down the aisle. "Bernadette, I heard a disturbing rumor that you've asked Caroline's son to take my place at your wedding today. I hope that's not true." I took a deep breath. "It's not a rumor, Dad. Since you won't be there, Alex offered to walk me down the aisle, and I accepted." There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. "If he walks you down that aisle, don't expect me to show up at all," Dad said finally. "This is your last chance to do the right thing and invite Caroline. Otherwise, you're choosing to exclude me from the most important day of your life." I felt a surge of anger and determination. "Then don't come," I said firmly. "I'm not going to be manipulated into inviting someone who has spent 8 years trying to push me out of your life. If you choose Caroline over your daughter on my wedding day, that's your decision to live with." Dad's voice got louder and more aggressive. "You're being incredibly selfish and immature, Bernadette. Caroline has been nothing but kind to you, and this is how you repay her? By publicly humiliating her?" I almost laughed at the irony. Dad, Caroline has been systematically destroying my relationship with you for years. The fact that you can't see that shows how successful she's been. I hung up before he could respond, and immediately turned off my phone. I had a wedding to get ready for, and I wasn't going to let Dad and Caroline's drama ruin my special day any more than they already had. My final dress fitting was scheduled for that afternoon, and I almost canceled it because I was feeling so overwhelmed by everything that had happened. But Mom insisted that we go, saying it would be a good distraction from all the family drama. The bridal shop was busy with other brides and their families, all laughing and taking pictures and looking excited about their upcoming weddings. I felt like a fraud standing there in my beautiful white dress while my own wedding was falling apart around me. When the seamstress left me alone in the dressing room to make some final adjustments, I completely broke down. I sat on the little stool in front of the three-way mirror and sobbed until my makeup was completely ruined. This wasn't how my wedding day was supposed to feel. I was supposed to be excited and nervous and happy, not heartbroken and abandoned by half my family. My best friend Chloe, who was my maid of honor, found me crying and immediately came into the dressing room to comfort me. "I know this isn't the wedding you planned," she said, hugging me while I was still wearing the dress. "But we're going to make tomorrow beautiful anyway. We'll fill every empty seat with people who actually love and support you." Chloe had always been fiercely loyal and protective of me, and her words gave me the strength I needed to pull myself together. "You're right," I said, wiping away my tears. "The people who matter will be there, and that's what counts." I looked at myself in the mirror again, and this time I saw a bride who was strong enough to stand up for herself, even when it meant losing people she loved. On my wedding morning, I woke up feeling surprisingly calm and peaceful. Despite everything that had happened over the past few weeks, I felt a sense of clarity and determination that I hadn't experienced in months. Mom arrived at my hotel room early with coffee and pastries, and we sat on the bed talking and laughing while I got ready. "Are you nervous?" she asked as she helped me into my dress. "A little," I admitted, "but not about marrying John. I'm nervous about walking down the aisle without Dad, but I'm also excited about having our Alex there instead." Mom smiled at me in the mirror. "You know, I think this might turn out to be even more meaningful than having your father walk you down the aisle. Alex chose to be there for you when he didn't have to. That says something beautiful about the kind of person he is, and it says something beautiful about the kind of person you are too." Around noon, Alex arrived with a special playlist he had created for my getting ready time. It was full of songs that reminded me of happy memories and made me feel confident and joyful. "I wanted you to have music that represents who you are," he explained, "not music that reminds you of all the drama and sadness." We spent the afternoon talking, laughing, and preparing for the ceremony. For the first time since the rehearsal disaster, I felt genuinely excited about my wedding day. I was about to marry the love of my life, surrounded by people who truly cared about me, and that was what mattered most. As the ceremony time approached, I found myself looking toward the back of the chapel, hoping against hope that Dad might have changed his mind and decided to come. But when the music started and it was time for me to walk down the aisle, his seat remained empty. I could see guests noticing the absence and whispering to each other, probably wondering where the father of the bride was. For a moment, I felt a surge of sadness and disappointment. This was supposed to be one of the most important moments of my life, and my own father wasn't there to share it with me. But then Alex appeared at my side, looking handsome in his black suit and offering me his arm with a warm, encouraging smile. "Ready?" he asked quietly. I took his arm and nodded. "I'm ready." As we walked through the chapel doors and started down the aisle, something magical happened. Instead of feeling sad about Dad's absence, I felt proud of the choice I had made to stand up for myself. Instead of focusing on who wasn't there, I looked at all the faces of people who had chosen to support me and celebrate my happiness. Alex walked beside me with quiet confidence and dignity, and I could see guests smiling and nodding approvingly as we made our way toward the altar. When we reached the front of the chapel where my fiancé was waiting, Alex squeezed my hand and whispered, "I'm proud of you." Then he kissed my cheek and took his seat in the front row, right next to my mother. The moment I took my place next to my fiancé at the altar and turned to look out at our guests, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders that I didn't even know had been there. The chapel was full of people who loved and supported me, and the atmosphere was warm and joyful rather than tense and awkward. As Alex and I had walked down the aisle, I had heard cameras clicking and seen people dabbing at their eyes with tissues. Some of the guests were smiling so widely they looked like they might burst with happiness. But the most amazing thing happened when we reached the altar. The entire congregation started clapping. Not just polite wedding applause, but genuine, enthusiastic clapping that filled the chapel with sound and energy. It was like they were showing their approval not just for the wedding, but for the strength I had shown in standing up for my beliefs. My fiancé squeezed my hands and whispered, "You look absolutely beautiful, and I'm so proud of you." The officiant began the ceremony, and I felt completely present and focused on what was happening. I wasn't thinking about Dad's empty seat or Caroline's manipulation tactics or the relatives who had chosen not to come. I was thinking about the commitment I was making to the man I loved, surrounded by people who had proven their love for me through their actions rather than just their words. The ceremony was everything I had dreamed it would be: emotional, meaningful, and filled with joy. At the reception, Alex surprised me by asking if he could give a speech during the dinner portion of the evening. I had no idea what he was planning to say, but I trusted him completely after everything he had done for me. When he stood up and tapped his glass to get everyone's attention, the room fell silent. "Most of you know that I walked Bernadette down the aisle today," he began, "and some of you might be wondering how that came to be." He looked directly at me and smiled. "Bernadette asked me to be part of her special day not because we're related by marriage, but because she needed someone who would show up for her when it mattered most. And that got me thinking about what family really means." Alex continued, "I used to think family was just about shared blood or marriage certificates. But Bernadette taught me that real family is about showing up. It's about supporting each other through difficult times. It's about choosing love over convenience, and doing what's right even when it's hard." By this point, there wasn't a dry eye in the room, including mine. "You don't need shared DNA to be family," Alex concluded. "You just need love, loyalty, and the willingness to stand by each other no matter what. Bernadette, thank you for showing me what real family looks like. And thank you for letting me be part of yours." The guests erupted in applause, and I got up to hug Alex while everyone cheered. In that moment, I realized that I had gained so much more than I had lost. I had gained a brother, a deeper understanding of what love really means, and the knowledge that I was strong enough to choose my own path in life. Later that evening, while I was still in my wedding dress and dancing with my new husband, my phone buzzed with a text message. I almost didn't check it because I was having such a wonderful time, but something made me glance at the screen. It was from Dad. "You embarrassed me today. I hope you're happy with your choice to exclude your family from your wedding. Everyone is talking about how disrespectful you were to Caroline and me. I hope it was worth it." I stared at the message for a moment, feeling a familiar surge of hurt and anger. Even on my wedding day, Dad was trying to make me feel guilty for standing up for myself. He was trying to steal my joy and make me second-guess the decisions I had made. But then I looked around at my reception, at my new husband laughing with his groomsmen, at Mom dancing with Uncle Paul, at Alex talking with Chloe and her parents like he had known them forever. This was my family now. These were the people who had chosen to celebrate with me rather than judge me. I opened Dad's text message again and, without reading it a second time, blocked his number mid-sentence. I handed my phone to Chloe and said, "Put this somewhere safe where I won't be tempted to look at it again tonight." Then I went back to dancing and celebrating the best day of my life. Dad's disapproval and Caroline's manipulation no longer had any power over me. I had found my real family, and they were right there in that room, celebrating my happiness without any conditions or demands. 3 months after my wedding, I was surprised to receive a call from Dad asking if we could meet for coffee. I almost said no immediately, but something in his voice made me reconsider. We agreed to meet at a small diner downtown, neutral territory where neither of us would feel uncomfortable. When I arrived, Dad was already there, looking older and more tired than I remembered. "Thank you for coming," he said as I sat down across from him. "I wasn't sure you would." We ordered coffee and sat in awkward silence for a few minutes before Dad finally spoke. "Bernadette, I'd been thinking about what happened with your wedding, and I think maybe I overreacted a little bit. Caroline and I have been having some problems lately, and I'm starting to see that maybe she wasn't always as innocent in our family conflicts as I thought she was." I stared at him, amazed that he was finally beginning to see through Caroline's manipulation, but also angry that it had taken him this long to figure it out. "Dad, I tried to tell you for years what Caroline was doing, but you never listened to me. You chose to believe her version of events over your own daughter's." Dad looked uncomfortable and defensive. "I know I made mistakes, but I was trying to make my marriage work. Caroline convinced me that you were just jealous and trying to cause problems between us." I felt a familiar surge of frustration and disappointment. Even now, Dad was making excuses for his behavior and trying to shift blame onto Caroline instead of taking responsibility for his own choices. "You made a choice," I said quietly. "So did I." I stood up, put money on the table for my coffee, and walked out of the diner before he could say another word. 1 year later, on my first wedding anniversary, my husband and I went to visit Mom for a quiet celebration dinner. While we were looking through old photo albums and reminiscing about the wedding day, I came across a picture that I hadn't seen in years. It was from when I was about 8 years old, dressed up in one of Mom's old slips as a pretend wedding dress, with Dad kneeling beside me and both of us grinning at the camera. For a moment, I felt a pang of sadness for the relationship Dad and I used to have and the dreams we used to share. But then I looked around at my real family, my husband, my mom, and Alex, who had driven over to join us for dessert, and I realized that I hadn't lost anything important. I had simply gained something better. "Do you ever regret how things turned out?" Mom asked gently, noticing me looking at the old photo. I thought about it for a moment, then shook my head. "No," I said with certainty. "I still got my dream wedding. It just happened differently than I planned." I looked at Alex, who was helping my husband set up a board game on the coffee table, and smiled. "Sometimes the people who show up for you aren't the people you expect, but they're exactly the people you need." If you've made it through this entire story with me, hit that subscribe button because sometimes family isn't about blood. It's about who chooses to love and support you when it matters most. And sometimes the most beautiful moments come from the most unexpected places.